My mother-in-law secretly called 911 during my baby shower. But 10 minutes later, the police officer looked at her and said, "Ma'am, you're the one we're going to need to speak with. My name's Emily Parker. I'm 30 years old, married to my husband Ethan for almost 6 years. By the time this story happened, I was 33 weeks pregnant with our first baby after 3 years of fertility treatments. So when my best friend offered to host my baby shower at her home outside Nashville, Tennessee, it felt like more than a party. It felt like we'd finally made it. The backyard looked beautiful. White roses, soft blue balloons, a long wooden table covered in tiny gifts. Nearly 40 friends and family members had shown up. Even my mother-in-law, Linda, arrived carrying a wrapped present and wearing the biggest smile I'd seen from her in years. If you only met Linda that afternoon, you'd think she adored me. She hugged me, rubbed my stomach, told everyone how excited she was to become a grandmother. People kept saying, "Emily, you're lucky to have such a sweet mother-in-law." I smiled, but inside I knew better. Linda had never believed I was the right woman for Ethan. She'd never said it outright. Instead, she hid it inside little comments. "You look tired today. I hope you're ready to be a real mother. Some women just aren't naturally maternal." Little things, always with a smile, always impossible to call out. Over the past few months, she'd become strangely nice. Brought over homemade soup, called every weekend, even insisted on helping decorate the baby shower. I honestly thought becoming a grandmother had changed her. Turns out, she was only waiting for the perfect audience. About halfway through the party, while everyone gathered around to watch me open gifts, I noticed Linda quietly slipping out the front gate with her phone. She stayed outside for less than 2 minutes. When she came back, she looked almost relieved. I assumed she was taking a work call. 5 minutes later, Ethan stood beside me holding one tiny pair of baby shoes. He smiled. "I know today is about Emily," he laughed. "But I just want everyone here to know she's already the most incredible mom." Everyone clapped. I was wiping away tears when 2 police cruisers pulled slowly into the driveway. The music stopped. Conversations ended. 2 uniformed officers stepped out. One of them walked straight toward me. My heart started pounding. I thought something terrible had happened. Instead, the officer quietly asked, "Mrs. Parker, would you mind coming with us for just a moment?" And when I looked across the yard, my mother-in-law wasn't surprised at all. She was watching us like she'd been expecting them. I looked at Ethan. He looked just as confused as I was. The older officer spoke gently. "Mrs. Parker, we'd like to ask you a few questions in private. It'll only take a minute." The backyard had gone completely silent. I followed the officers onto the front porch while everyone watched from the yard. Once we were alone, the officer lowered his voice. "Ma'am, we received a 911 call claiming you were being emotionally pressured in your marriage." For a second, I honestly thought he'd mixed me up with someone else. "What?" He nodded. "The caller said your husband controls your finances, isolates you from your family, and that you're afraid to speak in front of him." I couldn't help staring. "That's completely false." He asked a few more questions. "Has your husband ever threatened you?" "No. Do you feel safe going home today?" "Absolutely." "Were you pressured to attend this baby shower?" I actually laughed. "I helped plan it." The officer smiled politely. "I figured as much. But we have to look into every call we receive." I understood. He wasn't accusing anyone. He was simply doing his job. After a few more questions, he closed his notebook. "I appreciate your honesty." Then he said something that caught me off guard. "One more thing. The caller asked us to keep your husband at a distance while we spoke with you." I frowned. "Who called?" "I'll be able to share that shortly." As we walked back toward the backyard, I noticed Linda standing near the dessert table. She wasn't talking to anyone. She wasn't even pretending to smile anymore. She kept watching the officers, almost nervously. The older officer glanced around the yard, then approached her quietly. "Ma'am, are you Linda Brooks?" My mother-in-law's expression shifted. "Yes, that's me." He nodded. "Could we speak with you for just a moment?" She forced a laugh. "Of course. Is something wrong?" The officer's tone stayed even. "We've confirmed that Mrs. Parker is safe. Now we need to go over the report that came in to dispatch." The color drained from Linda's face. A few guests nearby noticed and grew quiet. She opened her mouth, but before she could say a word, the officer added calmly, "And I should mention these calls are recorded, so we'll be reviewing exactly what was reported." Linda's smile faded completely. I think there's been some misunderstanding." The officer didn't argue. He simply glanced at his notes. "Ma'am, according to the call, You stated that Mrs. Parker was being controlled by her husband, that she wasn't allowed to make her own decisions, and that the pregnancy was being used to keep her in the marriage. A few nearby guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. I felt my stomach drop. The officer looked at Linda. Those are serious claims to report. Linda crossed her arms. I was worried about her. He nodded, patient. Being worried isn't a problem, ma'am, but knowingly reporting something untrue to emergency services is something we have to take seriously. The backyard had gone quiet. Nobody moved. Then my husband, Ethan, stepped beside me. His voice was calm. Mom, why? Linda glanced around at the guests still watching. For a long moment, she didn't answer. Finally, she sighed. I thought Emily was changing you. I thought once the baby came, she'd keep you away from us. You've spent less and less time with this family. Ethan looked heartbroken. No, Mom. I've spent less time here because every visit turned into you criticizing my wife. Linda's eyes filled with tears. I was only trying to protect my son. The officer stepped in gently. Ma'am, family disagreements don't justify a call like this. Emergency lines are for people who genuinely need help. He explained that since there was no actual emergency, the report would be documented and forwarded for review. She wouldn't be taken in that afternoon. But the false report could still carry consequences down the line. Linda quietly nodded. Then she looked at me. For the first time in 6 years, there wasn't anger, there wasn't superiority, only embarrassment. I'm sorry, Emily. I didn't know what to say, so I simply nodded. The party slowly started again. People turned the music back on. Kids ran across the yard. Someone brought out the cake, but everything felt a little different. On the drive home, Ethan reached over and squeezed my hand. I'm done pretending this is normal, he said. If Mom wants to be part of our daughter's life someday, she'll have to earn that trust back. It was the first time he'd ever truly stood between us. 3 months later, our daughter Sophie was born healthy. Linda didn't come to the hospital. She sent flowers instead, with a handwritten card that simply read, I'm sorry. I hope one day you'll forgive me. Forgiveness didn't happen overnight. Trust took even longer. But one thing never changed. Whenever I think back to my baby shower, I don't remember the decorations or the gifts. I remember the moment I realized that the people who try hardest to control the story are usually the least prepared. When the truth finally speaks for itself. If this story meant something to you today, I'd be so grateful if you'd hit subscribe. We share stories just like this one every single day. About family, about truth, and about the moments that finally reveal who someone really is. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had someone in your family try to control your story?